On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Ty Lunsford. He is the Senior Manager of Analytics Engineering and Data Product Management at Instacart. We're going to be talking about the process of maturing your analytics org. So every analytics department or team at some point needs to grow up. Some of those signs are obvious, some are not. We'll talk about some of those. And how do you go about splitting out functions? How do you go about, reorganizing the extra help, the extra team you're bringing in, and you still have to deliver. So all that sounds like a thing, but you have to deliver, which is the key here. So Ty, I'm excited to have you on to talk about this.
Thanks, Amir. Yeah, this is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. I've helped solve problems in this space for several years now. So I've got a lot of experience here to draw from and learned a lot of lessons along the way. Some I've learned the hard way. So hopefully what I can share during our time here today will save others some of the trouble of having to learn things the hard way like I've done.
Absolutely. That's what we love to hear. So let's start off at the top. I always like to find out, where you're working at. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of Instacart, but let's just make sure everyone knows what you guys do. And then what are your responsibilities as the senior manager there?
Sure. So Instacart very recently just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. So, of course, that means we've been around since 2012. Now, we citizens of the world have, for the last 2.5 years, gone through this collective experience that we've referred to as the COVID plague, essentially, right? Every single one of us was somehow affected by this. Now, Instacart happened to be in the right place at the right time, despite all of the hardship and struggles and misery that COVID created. Instacart was very well positioned to help all of our customers through that by offering up our grocery delivery services. So that's really where the company started, was in this service provider space, delivering groceries. Now, that may not sound all that exciting, but there is a huge market and a huge demand for this sort of service, not only for delivering groceries, but also delivery in all kinds of other spaces. The service industry as a whole has blown up, especially over the last, say 10 to 15 years. SaaS has made that possible. Made it possible to scale providing services in a way that just before the internet really wasn't possible. So Instacart, like I said, started out in this grocery delivery space. That's our biggest revenue stream now. We have other revenue streams coming from ads. That's a very fast growing revenue stream, and then some others, but those are really the two big ones that we focus on right now. All right. So my role here at Instacart involves running our analytics engineering and data product management team. Now, the title of my role has changed in the relatively short amount of time that I've been here. Originally, I was hired as a senior manager of data. Now, that vague title doesn't do much to communicate to either myself, my stakeholders, my partners, or people outside of Instacart what it is that I do. So in this time that I've been here at Instacart, I've worked to evolve my team and evolve myself into a role that is better understood, has a clearer title, and that's where this comes from, right? The senior manager of analytics engineering and data product management. Those are really the areas that I focus on. So I have a team of, at this point, I think we're up to 11 people made up of analysts, of analytics engineers, and data product people. Now, I'm fortunate in that Instacart has been successful enough over the last 5 years in particular that I'm able to get the support I need from my boss, from my boss's boss, to build out the team I need to support the accounting and finance teams primarily that we work in support of. Now, our support offerings go beyond just accounting and finance, but those are the groups that we are primarily working in support of. So that's my role. That's what I'm focused on, and that's my team.
Awesome. So I guess let's talk about Obviously, an analytics org, always starts with potentially one or two people, and obviously starts growing from there. And as you start, having some of those company growth constraints, you need more from the analytics team. If you are sitting, let's say, in a company that is in high growth, maybe it's a startup, right, or maybe it's just in a high growth sector, and analytics is all of a sudden becoming a big need. Obviously, one of the easy signs is, well, I just need more data. I need to have that at the access point. But when you're talking about starting to see some of the maturation, your team's kind of getting bigger at Instacart. What are some of those signs that, hey, we do need to start hiring? We do start thinking about re-envisioning how the analytics team is set up. What are some of those signs that you start going, hey, I got to start paying attention to this?
Sure. So when companies are smaller, the world of analytics, data requirements for an analytics team, all of that tends to be at best an afterthought. Several years ago, I worked at a startup that had a total of, I think, 90 people. I was hired on as a senior business intelligence analyst. And although that title sounded good to my boss, he didn't truly understand what that meant, right? And he was new to this. He was trying to solve a problem, and he needed my help to solve that problem. So I joined the team. We had another few people on board. So we were a team of 3 or 4, something like that. Now, that structure of that team suited the needs of the business at that time. But as the business grew, so did the demand for our service offerings and the products that we produced. Now, your question is, how can you tell when it's time for a team to start maturing? One telltale sign that it's time to rethink the way your analytics team is structured is when there tends to be too much conflict in terms of knowing who on the team is responsible for doing what work, for owning the various work streams, for managing the different data products that are produced in a team like that. So when you see conflict arising, when it seems like, maybe we haven't seen the same amount of conflict in the past, it's likely due to the fact that there is more and more demand coming to the analytics team, and that causes confusion, anxiety among the members of the team. Nobody knows exactly who's responsible for what. Again, for a smaller team with less demand, it's a little easier, right? You have fewer stakeholders, you have fewer people who are demanding things of you. But as that group of stakeholders grows, so does the need to more effectively manage the intake process and the way work is doled out. You can think of this as scaling the team, right? That conflict is a sure sign that the team needs to, in one or more ways, be scaled in a more effective way. So that conflict is one way to see this. Also, when the intake process is not well understood, both by your team and by your stakeholders, that's another good sign that you need to rethink the way the team is structured. Now, I've lived through this pain before at multiple companies on multiple teams. I've worked to implement a more structured intake process. So rather than these one-off Slack messages or emails to somebody on the analytics team, we've stood up. Most recently here at Instacart, we use Jira. We have a ticket creation process. Our stakeholders now go to our intake form. They submit their request. They describe the issues that they're dealing with, and that's how they ask for help. Now that is a very structured intake process. Not all analytics teams have Jira, for example, right? There are other ways to add some structure to the intake process that don't cost, frankly, the same thing that Jira costs. One example is by creating a Kanban board using free tools like Trello. That's another way I've done this in the past when I didn't have a tool like Jira to help here. So that intake process, a clunky intake process that you can sense causes more confusion than it actually helps, that's another sure sign that it's time to evolve and mature as a team.
Mm-hmm. I guess when you're starting to look at, and obviously that's an interesting issue when the intake process isn't understood, bring in a tool, Jira, Trello, similar, put it on a whiteboard if you like, whatever it is, like to your point, whatever works for your organization. When you're starting to then look at, some of that you mentioned also, and when people aren't sure of, who is taking the accountability or ownership of certain things, when you're starting to look at that and you start deciding, okay, well, now we do need to formalize the process. We potentially need to hire some more, we need to iron some of these things out. When you're looking at the hiring part and you have different skill sets on the team, and within data now, the skill sets are becoming pretty refined. You can have analytics engineer and data engineer and sitting on the same team, but yet doing different roles, but overlapping. How do you start pulling apart that overlap and making sure that you're able to help solve that ownership and accountability component?
Yeah, that is another question that has come up in my experience multiple times at different companies and in different groups. And what I have found has worked best for me is to create a vision and mission statement, or create your vision and mission statements. Now, I know that seems probably pretty rudimentary, and that seems like management 101, but once a team gets to that point that it needs to start functioning more as a young adult as opposed to the undisciplined teenager, having this vision statement, having the mission statement goes a long way to set parameters, not only for your team, but also for your stakeholders and partners. What is it that we do? What are we responsible for? Setting those parameters is extremely helpful in making it clear within the org who's responsible for what in this analytics space. Yes, my team made up of product people, of analysts and analytics engineers. We work closely with our data engineering team upstream from us. We also work closely with other product engineering teams that are upstream from them. So in that big data ecosystem, that engineering ecosystem, there inevitably are going to become questions about who owns what. That vision and mission statement is really, that's the right way to start out here, to make that clear for all the different groups that are involved.
Absolutely. I guess as you're starting to build out some of the process, right? You mentioned, start formalizing it, make sure people understand things, make sure everyone understands the mission. Obviously, you're growing the team, more people coming in, everyone needs to be able to onboard and understand. When you start looking at the actual granular people on the team, and you're starting to look at, like we said, you could split hairs between some of these titles and roles. And how do you start putting people in the right roles to support, this maturing of the organization? So obviously overlap is good. Too much overlap is bad. This is a lot of the art versus the science of management. But how do you start pulling those pieces apart to make sure the team can deliver, but isn't becoming too siloed or knowledge can't transfer, all those kind of things?
Sure. So I'll go through my experience here at Instacart, which is really similar to the 4 or 5 other jobs that I've had throughout my career where I've done this. When I first came on here at Instacart, we were known as the data team, right? And that's so vague. It's really hard for people to understand what we're responsible for. As I developed a good sense for the lay of the land, so to speak, I started to recognize various work streams that we were handling. We had different stakeholders, of course, who represented different parts of the business, and some of them were submitting more requests to us than others. Understanding these work streams made it obvious to me that I needed to break out our support offering. So instead of having a group of jacks of all trades I had people become masters, right? So I assigned people what I'll call ownership of these different work streams. So whether that's tax or revenue accounting or whatever it is, we have these multiple different work streams coming in our way. And I signed, like I said, people ownership of these different work streams. Now, too much of that, to your point, results in a team that is just too siloed, right? If any one of these experts is out for a week, for example, there's nobody else who can fill in for them. So, striking that right balance, that mix of art and science here is really key. I think of, and I know this makes me sound like an absolute data nerd, but I will admit this. I think in Venn diagrams a lot of times, right? And so when I think about the makeup of my team, I think about each of these work streams as its own little circle, right? It represents this. And what my job is to make sure that, like you said, we have enough overlap in these different circles that make up this Venn diagram to ensure that I've got coverage for some of these different, well, not some, but for all of these different work streams, if and when I have people out. Again, if somebody goes on vacation for a week, I need to continue to provide coverage to the stakeholders who represent these different work streams. And the only way I can do this is to make sure that I have people on the team who know that subject area well enough to be able to come in and provide that support. So that's the approach that I've taken.
Absolutely. No, I like the analogy of using that Venn diagram to make sure, ownership and silos, those are the two extremes. Obviously, you want something in between, which the Venn diagram helps you understand. And I guess the one component that maybe I'll ask you about is when you are adding different skill sets to the team, you're going to find that right balance. You might end up in a situation where you have one person doing one thing to support a couple of those ownership buckets, but obviously you don't want to feel that that person doesn't want to feel like they're a team of one within the team. And will there be growth in that particular function? Hey, where am I going to go? That's always a little challenge, especially as the team's maturing. You're like, well, I need you to do this. And the question is like, well, I really need to also re-envision what's going to happen to your career here, because everyone needs to know that before they can really be comfortable and think, hey, I got to execute because I have a future ahead of me.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And that is a very real scenario. I've actually very recently lived that scenario. And so the way I handle that is just by inserting other people into that support model. We manage, like I referred to a while back, manage our intake process using Jira. We've adopted the agile approach here. So we run our sprints on a 2-week cycle. And so by assigning some of these shared tickets to other folks on the team, that's a way to get them involved with these other work streams and sharing in that ownership. Nobody wants to be too pigeonholed for too long in supporting any of these work streams. So it's important that people, can share those responsibilities.
Absolutely. I guess the one overarching thing that we haven't talked about is you're starting to have the team mature. You're putting processes in place. You're hiring new people. All this new stuff to handle this growth, but the team still needs to deliver. You need to manage that delivery. So it's not like you can go off and say, hey, I clear my calendar for a month. I'm just going to go, focus on this and get this right. You still are dealing with day-to-day delivery. How do you balance that? And then secondly, the team, how do they start, the help you need to actually, make sure they're delivering while you guys are doing this?
Sure. So this goes back to the intake process, right? We have requests coming in, a wide variety of requests, but you can really break these request types or requests into two different categories: basic support and then also project related. So understanding the difference between the two and reviewing the work, managing the work in those two different kind of frames of mind or ways of thinking is is really the way that I manage my team, such that we can, like you said, continue to offer our support while also building for the future. Now, one crucial element for building towards the future is understanding what the future is. And so with the mission and vision statements in place, and working with my stakeholders and other partners, it's much easier for us to work together to plan what that future looks like in terms of the various data products that we're responsible for. We've embarked very recently on a really important project in this data space here within Instacart. We refer to it as the financial data program. Now, this is key. This is essential to us evolving not only as a data team, but also as an accounting team and as a company as a whole. This financial data program is a way for us to apply different processes, policies, and products that make it easier for all of our stakeholders to understand what that future is in this data space, what they can expect from us. So one piece of that, of course, is building out a roadmap. Our roadmap focuses on not only short-term and medium-term, but also long-term data products that we're working on. So having that roadmap that we share with our stakeholders, with our partners, and also that we develop internally as a team makes it that much clearer to the folks on my team what the vision is, what we're working towards, but then prioritizing that work on the roadmap, that project work with the other support offerings that's key to ensuring that we're doing both of these things at the same time. Prioritization is not always a fun process, right? So the way that I work with my team to prioritize the work we have on our plates is to be very involved with our stakeholders. And we support stakeholders who represent several different parts of the business. The approach that I take is I get these stakeholders who represent the different parts of the business in the same room at the same time for sprint planning. This is how I can facilitate that conversation, and really it puts the onus of prioritizing this work on our stakeholders. They work together. They battle it out to decide what work gets done and by when. Really, that's not a decision for me to make. That is the decision to be made by our stakeholders. And so that's how I do it.
Absolutely. I mean, it all seems to kind of fit the narrative of, what you've been talking about. You need to have, internal, external, expectations, processes understood, that mission, vision statement, improving that intake. Some of those sound like really, short-term things while you're balancing long-term things to make sure the team can still deliver. So I think, it seems like it ties in really well.
Sure. Absolutely.
Awesome, man. I was going to ask you, I know we're butting against the end of our session. Is there a topic, and I'm asking guests because I think this would become an interesting little question I ask but is there a topic or question you would want a future guest to cover or answer?
Yeah, there is. This is a question that has been kind of burning itself into my mind over the last 5 years, especially with the trend towards automating all the things, right? We talk about this, especially those of us who work in tech, right? And one of my responsibilities with my team is to automate manual processes. This is happening all over the world right now. With all the work and the progress that we as humankind are doing to automate everything, how is that going to affect the analytics space, right? We can automate ETL functions. We can automate, we can and choreograph all the data pipelines and so forth. I just can't see how we can automate the actual analysis of data when the goal is to produce insights and make these judgment calls. So really what I'm trying to get at here is what is that risk of automation in that realm for people like me who do this work? Is that something, maybe I'm far enough, maybe I'm old enough that I don't need to worry about that. In another 15, 20 years, maybe, I'll be done with my career. So that's not a problem that'll affect me. But maybe this is a problem that's going to hit sooner than that. This is what I'd like to hear a real expert talk about.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. I think Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to put it out there to the audience if they know someone that can cover that. I think that'd be a fantastic topic. I'll definitely try to find somebody if somebody doesn't come forward to see if they can talk about it, because I think people in the software space, software engineering space, have similar concerns. AI can write code.
Right.
What happens if AI is helping write code? What do you do? Like, I mean, and I guess this is the bigger AI question of, it's going to help it bring efficiency. So where's those skill sets go? So maybe we'll find somebody that can talk about some of the impact of AI on jobs in the tech field. Great question. And I guess if somebody wants to reach out to you just to talk about anything on the podcast, what is a good way of getting a hold of you? LinkedIn, Twitter, email, what's a good format?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn multiple times every day. That's a great way to get in touch with me. I can also be contacted via my personal email address. It's ty.lunsford, LUNSFORD @gmail.com. And I look forward to receiving any and all communication that may come my way.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure we put the right links out there. And if somebody wants to follow with Ty, that'd be great. Ty, thanks for being on. Thanks for sharing. It's been great.
Yeah, thanks, Amir.
Absolutely. That's it for this episode. Back again, different guest, different topic. Two things. One, if you do find the podcast useful, share it. That's how the podcast grows. So I keep asking and keep reminding people, because literally that's the best form of marketing to get this kind of content out to people, because you find it useful and maybe someone that does. Secondly, if someone can talk about the topic Ty mentioned, I'd love to have you on. Reach out to me, let me know. It's only a 30-minute recording. Love to have somebody talk about that subject. I think a lot of people would be interested. Until next time, that's it. Thank you and goodbye.